For this episode,
we're talking about this book.
Yes, this book is called The Surrendered Wife. It's by Laura Doyle. And this is a book that gets some criticism on the internet. But I will say, though, we both read this book. I found the book. I was looking for it because I was like, okay, there's some books that I recommend to men on how to be masculine in a relationship, but there's very few books on how to be feminine and femininity and how to be a good wife in a relationship. You know,
which I wouldn't even say this is a book on femininity.
No,
per se. Like, yeah, there's some aspects to it, but I think it is a book on how to have what we feel like is the best dynamic for a couple, which is the man is the leader and the authority and leads the relationship, and the woman gets to like be more soft and follow his lead.
Right.
And that sort of dynamic creates the most peace for both people, because men need to feel like they have a purpose, which would be leading the relationship, and women want to not have the stress in their lives so that they can focus on their feminine aspects, like nurturing and caring and, you know, living a softer life.
Right.
Because we were talking about this in the car as well. Women are not designed to handle stress the way that men are. No human being is designed to handle huge amounts of stress.
Right.
Period. But women are not, like, they're not able to handle it as easy as men can. And there were even times in our relationship where you're like, give me this thing so that you're not stressed out. And I'm like, no, it stressed me out thinking about stressing you out more. So, you know, this sort of dynamic that we have and that she talks about in the book is, I feel like, the more beneficial way for both the man and the woman, because the man gets to step up and be the man that he wants to be deep down.
Yeah.
And the woman gets to kind of let go of the control, let go of feeling like she has to be the one to make sure everything is in the right place and everything's flowing normally. And that stresses her out more than she even thinks a lot of the time. She can let go of control. She can focus on the things that she needs to focus on and be more in her feminine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, this book, like all books, is not perfect.
Right.
But we both highly recommend this book because this book will help you in that. Especially, I think it depends on who you are, but I would say most women should read this book because
most women should at least read it.
Yeah.
And I wrote down that it's especially good for a more masculine woman. Like if you were single for so long and you had to do everything on your own. I know we were just talking about masculine women and things like that.
Yeah.
That, and maybe you had a more feminist viewpoint.
Sure.
Like, you know, women can do everything. Like, I'm not saying that they can't, but I'm just saying this book is written from a woman who was that woman.
Yeah, exactly.
She calls herself a feminist.
Yeah.
To the point where she did not take her husband's last name for 9 years of their marriage.
Yeah.
9 years.
Yeah.
Which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
To begin with. Like, that just shows how much of a feminist she was, though. Which I appreciated about the book because, as we've talked about on other episodes too, I was more masculine before you came along. And so I do feel like it's beneficial because I do feel like a lot of women are in their masculine because they have to be, especially because there's a lot of feminine men like we just talked about. And so you get the perspective of someone that's been on both sides. Like, this is not a woman who was raised in the church and is like, I'm just supposed to obey my husband. That's not what this book is about. That's not who wrote it. It's not about any of that. So it's beneficial whether you're like ready to settle down or anything like that. I mean, it's definitely good for people who are getting married or in a serious relationship. Like, you should definitely be reading that. But, you know, I think it's good for everybody to read. But I'm the type of person, too, that I will take any sort of point from a book, even if I don't love the book.
Yeah.
You can usually find some nuggets of wisdom in the book anyway.
And I'll say, you know, I've been coaching guys for over 10 years now. And, you know, ladies, your husband would definitely like for you to read this book. Like, you will definitely, because, and the reason why I say that is because a lot of things that she talks about in this book are exactly what men are complaining about in the relationship, or exactly the broken problem on the female side of it. Now, again, a man should be the leader of the relationship. He should be the ones that's working on repairing, improving, guiding their relationship. But if the thing I like the most about this book is this, because women are not in the leading position, right? But this, as a woman, sort of allows you to lead in the sense that it allows you to do it or to influence without having to be the one in charge by actually taking that. So, because it's really hard, like as a man in a relationship, I can be like, okay, look, no, this is what we need to do, right? And when I'm stepping up and making decisions and leading, it's attractive to you because that's my role. That's how I should be. If you're a woman in a relationship, right, and you notice there's problems and you want to fix them and change them, it's much harder for you because if you step up and say, look, this is what we need to do, and you start, then you're actually hurting the relationship by trying to fix it. So it kind of puts you in this passive position where it's like, I can't do anything. But that's why I like this book, is because if you start implementing the things that are in this book, you're able to actually have that kind of influence, because a lot of times women are stuck in situations where they're like, well, what do? I just have to wait for my man to be more masculine.
Right.
And this is ways to do it, because a lot of what she says about it in this book is
because you're kind of blocking his masculine. And he's learned to almost be more feminine because you've been masculine for so long that he gets to sit back and enjoy the ride and while you plan the vacations and, that's what's happening. So it's kind of fitting that we started with the feminine man thing, because I think it ties in a lot. To, because some of these men are more feminine, maybe not even by their choice, but because they've been with such masculine women and they've kind of been like, okay, well, I'm going to be passenger princess then, and I don't have to do anything.
Right.
And she talks about that a lot in this book. And I will say that the book is a little black and white with some of the stuff, in the sense that she is talking to women who are still really in their masculine, like you said, the women who have to control everything to the point where their man doesn't really do a lot of the stuff and the woman does everything. But they don't even realize that by them taking over such extreme control that they've caused their husband to not have to do anything. It's not that he necessarily wants to not do anything. It's that he doesn't feel like he can talk about it or just do it or things like that. And so when you read the book, it is going to be a lot of like, don't say anything about this, or like, I know in one of the parts it talks about like finances, and she's like, give the finances 100% to your husband. And she talks all about the women like, oh no, like we can't do that. And, our bills won't get paid and, he won't do it. And he came to me with the checkbook and is like, help me, because I'm usually the one paying the bills. And she's like, don't even talk to him. Like, don't even. And I was like, wow, that's like,
it's so true.
That's dramatic though. And it's going to be hard. And she talks about it. She's like, you're going to want to give in and be like, let me just do it. You know what I mean? Which is what a lot of women do when they try to give a little bit of the control back to the man. They're like, just let me do it. Yeah. And then they're right back where they started.
But you have to, you have to do it to that level, because a lot of women, because it's men's fault too, because men need to look, a man should have not allowed this to happen in the first place, right? He should have took charge. He should be in charge of the finances, right? He should have been handling all those things. But if he didn't, then a lot of times what ends up happening is that the woman is now babying the man by taking care of this stuff, right? Because he can't handle this stuff. Or, and then she starts to despise him and think he's incompetent. Right. She's
or
like,
another child. Like a lot of women say that.
Joke that all the time, right? And so what's beautiful about this approach is that you're letting him sink or swim. And so, maybe the bill doesn't get paid and you lose the electricity. And that will happen one time, maybe two times, right? And I know that sucks if that happens, but he's a competent human being. He will learn, he'll figure it out. He will get on track. But it will only happen when you completely take your hands off of it and let him. And men are going to make mistakes and fail. But part of being a man is, in having the support of a woman, is that she lets you make your mistakes.
Well, and she talks about that in one of the chapters. She talks about how you have to be really vulnerable to do this, because it is in your survival instincts to be like, why am I going to let him not pay the electricity bill if I do it every month on time? That would never happen. Why am I going to give this to somebody who's potentially going to drop the ball? And she's like, you basically have to just be vulnerable and have to put yourself in that position, because he's not going to be able to get back to the man that you want or that he was if you're still controlling the situation. So I thought that was good, is like, and it is scary because even when you go from being single and you have, as a woman, you have everything figured out, you pay your bills, you do this, you've like come up with a good cleaning schedule, you're like effectively like doing all these different things, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. And then you get in a relationship, even if you're with a masculine man like you have all these like processes that women think about that men don't necessarily think about. And so you start implementing things like that, and then it's harder to get your man into those. So you're kind of like, you start taking a little bit more control. You're like, okay, well, if you put your dirty clothes in the basket every time, then I can just nicely take them to the laundry room, and because like when you're on your own, you're not throwing your clothes all over the place. You're not doing things that men can do sometimes. And then you add a man in there, and like, he's not really worried about where he drops his clothes because he's worried about other things. He's worried about paying the bills and things like that. And so it's like, it can even start with little things like that where you want to take control.
Yeah.
And especially if you grew up with not a lot of control over your own life in some way.
Yeah.
I'm not meaning like you didn't get to do whatever you want as a kid, but if you know, where you don't necessarily have the control over your life that you need to feel secure.
Yeah.
You extra try to control things.
Right.
And so I think most women to some extent have some version of that. And I do agree with what she said, that it's some sort of survival mechanism as well too. Yeah. But you really do have to let that go, especially if you're married. Like, this is a surrendered wife. Like, you have to, again, and this is the book where she said, you chose this man for a reason. You should be respecting him. That's the lady that said that. You married this guy. Would you really have married a man-child? No. So somewhere along the way, you have taken so much control that you made this man into a man-child.
Yeah.
And I agree that anytime a man could step up and be like, no, I'm going to do this, or no, like, this is a boundary I have.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's all a woman's fault, but at the same time, us as women, we have to learn how to let go of control. Yeah. And that's something that I struggled with too, that you've helped me with as well.